Welcome. This is Cate, and welcome to a recording for Awakening Together. This is a pre-recorded 1 hour talk, and first of all, I'd just like to tell you that I love you, that we are one, that we are one in our Christ mind. And there's nothing else but the Christ mind. Everything else is an illusion or is not real. And what is real, there is a reality, and it is the Christ mind, and it is an experience or the awareness of perfect oneness. And it's joyful and it's beautiful, and you can live in that place of your mind while you're still seemingly here in a body. Excuse me. So let's start with a Holy Spirit prayer that came through me. I've been writing some prayers in some little prayer books, and this one's called, I think it's the Daffodil Book, which is all prayers about love and light and joy. And the Holy Spirit is our right mind. It is part of our mind that when we're in our ego mind, we're completely unaware of another mind that we can live in. And this other mind operates very differently. It knows only love, and it's joyful, and it sees clearly and truly. Holy Spirit, I am the love and the light. I am the all. You showed me this in the eternal, holy instant. I join with you today. So I got a frog in there, hang on. Let's start again. Holy Spirit, I am the love and the light. I am the all. You showed me this in the eternal holy instant. I join with you today and dance around in joy. I'm filled with your lightness and sing to you aloud. You are my loving mind, the truth, the everything. And I thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you. Amen. So prayers to God or the Holy Spirit. True prayer is just thanking the Holy Spirit for us having everything. And if we're upset, the prayer is to help me see this differently, help me see it as you see it, Holy Spirit. True prayer is just recognising that we are with God as God. There's nothing but God. God is everything. God is all. And actually God is perfect love, and that's all that's here. And the Course just says God is, and then we cease to speak. So words can't really describe what God is, because God's an experience. You can't really talk about what God is. You could maybe talk about what He's not. But once you get to experience God and join with God in your mind, then you have the peace of God. So what I was led today to do was to just open A Course in Miracles at a random page and start sharing from there. And today I've opened it at chapter 27, section 6, the witness to sin. So I've just opened it and I'm just going to start reading it. I haven't read it. I'm just going to read it and share. Just see what comes up. And then a topic for this talk will be found during the talk, and that will be the label for the talk. The Course in Miracles holographic teaching is really woven into every page, and it does illuminate. It speaks to the right mind. It wakes up the right mind. And the false mind starts to dissolve. And eventually there's just nothing left of the false mind, the false thoughts, the voice that seems to dominate our minds. So we come to see that we're not a body, we are mind. And the body is something that seems to be real, but actually is projected from the mind, from the egoic mind. And in truth, there's only God, and God is just love. So everything you see when you're in your true Holy Spirit God mind, Christ mind, they're all the same. They all, those terms just point to, they're pointing to us to an experience of this love. And the Holy Spirit leads us home. He helps us shift our perception. And each time we shift our perception, every little shift from fear to love is a miracle, because through that miracle we now respond differently to the world. And if you look up in A Course in Miracles, what is the world? It says the world is false perception. So that's all this is false perception. And once you have true perception, you're free. You're perceiving correctly. You're perceiving as God perceives, His beautiful son and daughters and everything's included. There's nothing left out. Everything's one with God, and God is everywhere in all. So there's nothing that isn't God. And that's because the mind is now perceiving. So it's not that anything's changed, it's the mind. So it's like having glasses on and they become, they get dirt on them, and we don't realise we've got dirt on them. So that's our mind. So our mind is perceiving something. And then as we clear the perception, we start to get clarity, and we see clearly, and we see that our brother is not separate, not our enemy, and that actually he's the Christ and he's us, and we're one in that Christ mind, and there's nothing but Christ, and there's nothing but holiness, and there's nothing but beauty. And we realise that we love our brother dearly. Our brother is our beloved. And that everything is our brother. The animals, the little earwig on the floor, the little ant, the little mosquito, they're all our brothers. They're all just beautiful. They're God. And that's where the gentleness comes in. We have this absolute gentleness for everything, and harmlessness. Harmlessness and gentleness is just a natural characteristic when you see clearly and you know that there is no death. Even though bodies seem to die, there's an essence, is an eternal essence of everything that's beyond the physicality. So it seems like there's bodies and physical things here, material aspects, but actually it's only God. It's all God, and there is life here. There is a reality here, and we start to perceive that, and we start to feel joyful when you start to see the truth. We start to perceive the truth, and we're overlooking we're forgiving, we're overlooking what we think our brother has done. Because once we see that there's nothing here but Christ, well, anything that anyone does here, they're asleep doing it. It's like they've fallen asleep and they think they're a body, and they think they need to fight somebody or kill somebody else to get something, but all they are is mistaken. They're not terrible, they're not evil. The Buddha described it as ignorant, and that really lines up with the Course's idea about sin, and it's just error to be corrected. And the good thing is nothing happened, because any time an ego does something, it can't have any effect, because nothing real can be threatened. Your Christ self cannot be threatened, and nothing else exists except your Christ self. And your Christ self is formless, and it can be experienced. It's joyful, and it's beautiful, and it's innocent, and it's guiltless, and it's never been affected by anything here that seems to have happened in this world. So the witnesses to sin. Pain demonstrates the body must be real. So when we have pain is actually in the mind. Anytime we have any judgment or grievances or guilt in our mind, it's felt as if it's in the body. So we can't heal the body doesn't heal, the mind heals. And as we heal our grievances and judgments, the body heals along with it. But when we believe we're a body and we have a grievance in our mind or a judgment, the pain is felt in the body, and what happens is we think that the pain then creates the idea that the body is real, and it says to us, this body must be real because I've got pain in it. Pain demonstrates the body must be real. It is a loud, obscuring voice whose shrieks would silence what the Holy Spirit says and keep his words from your awareness. Pain compels attention, drawing it away from him and focusing upon itself. So when we're experiencing pain, what we're required to do is notice the pain. Don't make a story out of it, which is to be mindful of the thoughts around the pain, such as, how long is this pain going to happen? I can't stand this pain. I want to be well. I don't want to be in bed. I don't want to be confined. I want to be free. I want to be out walking and doing. I don't want this pain. All those thoughts actually aren't helpful. They're stories, they're projections, and they're resistance. And pain compels attention, drawing it away from him, which is the Holy Spirit, and focusing on itself. So when we're focusing on the pain and we're upset by the pain and we want it to leave, we're actually giving the pain reality. We're believing that there's pain in our body, and we're making up a story, and we're resisting it, so it's becoming real. Now, its purpose is the same as pleasure, for they both are means to make the body real. So what's been taught here is that when we seek for pleasure for the body, and when we resist pain or we're upset by pain, what's happening there is the mind is asleep, believing the body is real. And these things, the pleasure for the body, seeking pleasure for the body and resisting pain, come back to an idea that the body is real and can experience pleasure and pain. And this is not true. What shares a common purpose is the same. This is the law of purpose, which unites all of those who share in it with itself. Okay, so it just says this is the law of purpose, which unites all of those who share in it with itself. In other words, if everyone shares in the same idea that we're bodies and the bodies can feel pain, this is the complete opposite to what the Course teaches, is that we're mind, and the mind is either in suffering, believing it's a body, or it's free, believing it's mind, and its body is neutral. So what shares a common purpose is the same. This is the law of purpose. So everyone unites, all the other minds unite in the same reasoning. Yes, I'm a body, I've got pain. Oh yes, I've got pain, I've had this. Yes, this is pain. Now we're not to deny this. We're not to deny pain, because that doesn't work. What we have to do is we have to, and I'll probably start talking about it, and then the Course will say the same thing probably. We need the help of the Holy Spirit, the right mind, to advise us and guide us how to perceive the pain. And we might get some little exercises to do. We might get guided to go and see someone that can help us shift our perception away from body identification. Pleasure and pain are equally unreal because their purpose cannot be achieved. So the purpose of the pleasure and pain is to keep us asleep, believing we're a body, and that, what he's saying there, is the purpose to keep us asleep. It cannot be achieved. There's no way that we can stay asleep forever, believing ourselves as bodies. Thus are they means for nothing, for they have a goal without a meaning, and they share the lack of meaning which their purpose has. So he's really saying that the body, there's only mind, there's nothing else. You might call it spirit, but you will eventually feel yourself more as mind, and that, well, I think that's what I identify more with now as mind. Now, they are the means for nothing, for they have a goal without meaning. So the pleasure and the pain keep us asleep. They keep us very interested in the body, and what happens is, while we're always believing that we're a body and that bodies can get sick and have pain, we will be basically hoodwinked into remaining in a suffering mind, because we're not going to the actual cause of the suffering. We're believing we're a body. So what happens is, when we think we're a body and we've got pain, we will seek out the remedy in the world as in a form. So we will then have a belief that something in the world can help the pain or fix our body. Now, what the Course tells us very clearly is the body's been projected from the mind, and so if it responds only to what the mind thinks. So if you've got a lot of guilt, if you're believing your guilt thoughts, if you're believing, if you've got a lot of judgment, anything, shame, guilt, grievances, anything in your mind that is not pure, perfect love creates pain in the body. And it's even though the body's not in reality really there, it seems to be there. We can't deny that we're seeing a body, but what we need to do is draw back our attention on the body. And how we do that is we start to, for example, when I had pain at times on my journey with working with the Holy Spirit, when I did have pain, I was guided to not make any story out of it. Now, to start with, I had some lower back pain, and I was going into some thoughts around, well, how long will this last? Will I be able to walk tomorrow? And I was guided, do not think anything. Don't go into story. Stay present right at this moment with the pain. Okay, so I sat there and I felt the pain, and then I was guided to take some medication, and it did ease the pain a bit. And that was the start, because I was very interested. Whenever I got any pain, I used it for healing my mind. It was an opportunity to go deeper. I was then able to get to a stage where, through working with the Holy Spirit, I could actually not experience any pain in my body. It was, I was able to use my mind to go beyond any experience of pain. And I think I've shared about this one other time, that I went on a walk. This body doesn't do any, it doesn't do any walking or much exercise, which is fine. And when I was in Canada with Kevin, we were invited to walk up a mountain, and it was very steep. And before that, we canoed for an hour, I think, to get there. And then it was maybe 2-hour walk up the mountain, and I was with the guy that took us, was extremely fit, and he walked at a very, reasonable pace. And I realised about 15 to 20 minutes after walking that I really wasn't fit enough to do this walk. So I then just raised my mind above my body, and I walked for 2 hours up the mountain, got to the top, then I walked 2 hours down, and coming down, it can be sort of, in some respects, just as difficult, because you're using other muscles. So what I was doing as I was going along and raising my mind above my body, so I was not feeling any pain at all, at times I would shift, and I would shift back into the body. And when I did, I felt this tremendous pain and tiredness all over my body, and aches. And then I would notice it, and then I'd shift my mind back to its Christ mind above the experience of pain. And then I would keep going. And I was doing this consciously, so that I could see that it was a choice we can make. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that you can. I'm not saying that you should feel guilty if you can't do this, because this took tremendous training. I had been mind training for many years prior to this with the Holy Spirit. So this is not something that I just did overnight. It's a level of mind that I was able to get to and am still in. Now, what was I going to say? Towards the end of that, coming down the mountain, as we were walking towards the canoe, I felt this absolute rush of energy, and I'd just been walking for 4 hours in heavy terrain. And I just felt full, the whole body got full of energy, and I started sprinting, and I ran as fast as I could. And so instead of actually being fatigued and, basically hardly being able to walk, which would have happened had I have identified with what my body was doing and saying how it was feeling, I was able to, I just ran. I sprinted. Kevin and I had a race. I said, I'll race you to that tree. And we were running. And it was joyful. And I was laughing. And we got in the canoe and we canoed back along the beautiful lake there. And then we had a swim off the rock and then canoed a bit further back home. And I wasn't sore the next day. The body wasn't sore. So this is something interesting that we can actually use our mind. Our mind is very powerful, and it can get above anything the body will do. It is not. The mind is the controller of the body. And what happens is when we are ill or sick, we are believing that we're separate from our creator and we're not joined, and there is a payoff for being sick. Now, when I used to get had chronic fatigue for many years, and prior to coming to the Course in Miracles in a very committed way, I had 8 years of fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. At some stages I couldn't lift the hairdryer up to dry my hair, couldn't hold it up, I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without stopping. And I basically was confined to bed most of the time. Part of the healing with that was the Holy Spirit guided me. I just gave myself over to the Holy Spirit, and I said, look, I want to be healed of this chronic fatigue. I know it's coming from the grievances in my mind, because that's what the Course says. So I've just believed the Course at that stage, and I thought I surrendered to its teachings. So I was guided. Now, this was my guidance, and when I tell you what I was guided to do, I'm not saying through what I was guided that it's for you, because just feel into it, and it's not for everyone what I'm going to say next, right? Because I've shared this before in groups, and people have said that, I just can't do that. It's not, I don't feel to do it. So this is for me. This was personal guidance, my personal guidance by the Holy Spirit for me. So I said to the Holy Spirit, I will do anything to heal from this chronic fatigue. It's debilitating, and I don't know what's in my mind. I don't know how to heal my mind, but I'll allow you to help me. So I just allowed it. Now, what came through was the Holy Spirit said to me, he guided me. He said, don't speak about your illness. Don't tell anyone how tired you are when they ask, because friends or family would come over, or I'd go and visit, and I'd say, how you feeling? And I would share, I've been I've been feeling really tired again. I used to get really bad tonsillitis, constant sore throats, and the flu. Very, this chronic fatigue is like having a really bad flu a lot of the time. So I'd been quite ill for 8 years, and then towards the last probably 2 years, I'd been getting worse. But it was all coming from incidences that were happening in my life, and my mind was going to a lot of fear. So the fear was being projected, and the body was mirroring the fear in my mind. So the Spirit said, don't speak about how you're feeling. You're not to say anything to anyone about how you're feeling. And if someone does ask you, you're to say, I am well. Thank you. I'm feeling very well. And also at that time, my daughter, I was having some issues with her. She had her own path, and she was doing some things that maybe in the ego's world would be deemed as unfavourable. But I can't say that anymore because I don't see anything as good or bad. So it's hard to get back to how I perceived it at the time, but I was perceiving that she was doing things. And that was because I had misperception. I was perceiving it that way. So I was deluded. But that's how I was at the time. That's how my mind was. So I was also guided when anyone asks about your daughter to say she is well and she is happy, and thank you, she's really good. So I was getting mind trained out of talking about my body. I kept identifying with my body all the time when I was continually talking about to people how sick I was. So the Holy Spirit was stopping all that. So he was saying, you're not to talk about it. So it was difficult. So there was a transfer, it was a period of time, and it might have been 2 or 3 months, where I was still feeling quite ill, quite sick, and very tired. And I had to say, and it wasn't like I was lying, because other minds were just asking me probably in politeness, how are you feeling? What's happening with you? And as soon as you say, I've been good, thank you, I feel well, then the conversation moves to something else. And it was as simple as that. And every time I affirmed the truth that I am well and that I am good, I was affirming the truth about the body, because the body will just be well naturally when the mind is healed. So I did that, and it seemed funny to start with because I was so used to trotting out my story, how I'd been. And I also noticed with part of when I was in story, I started to notice that I had been trying to get people to understand how bad I was. It had seemed very important to me, and that's why I talked about how sick I was a lot. I had this desire to be heard. I had this desire for some other mind to turn around and say, yeah, I'm hearing you. You must be really, really ill. But that never came. I never ever had anyone interested in or confirming my illness. And I see that was part of that searching. I was constantly searching for someone to affirm how ill I was. And that's part of the ego needing, that's when he's talking just then, where he says, its purpose, what shares where he says something about unites all those who share in it with itself. So it's trying to unite with others to confirm, yes, I'm this body and I'm really sick. So it's constantly seeking out others to confirm, oh, yes, you are very sick. Oh, that must be dreadful. And sometimes even if I did get that, it wasn't enough. So the ego, remember, the ego is seek and do not find. So it can't even seek for the acknowledgement of how sick it thinks it is. And it's creating this sick body to make us think that we are this body. So it's got our mind asleep believing that it's a body. But we have to come from the level that we're thinking, and each unraveling is the Holy Spirit just bringing our mind up a bit. So the first, he has to work with us where we're at. So I believed I was a body and I believed I had illness. And so the first step was, Cate, stop talking about it. And okay, so I started to feel a little bit better. But you've got to realise that when I entered into this, asking the Holy Spirit to help me heal, I was 100% dedicated to doing what I was being guided to do. I wasn't going to argue with the guidance. I was 100% willing because I 100% wanted to be well. So people have asked me so many times, how come you woke up? And I said, I didn't compromise. I did everything I was guided to do. I wanted the peace of God. I wanted the healing of my body, the healing of my mind above anything else. I got to that point where I just drew a line in the sand and I said, I want nothing else. And that was it. It was single pointed. I want nothing else but the healing of my mind. I want nothing else but the peace of God. And what happens is when we get the healing of our mind, the body just heals along with it. Now, another story is after that, the Holy Spirit worked with that. Then he started guiding me in lots of different ways, doing lots of little things, little projects he'd get me to do. So we would work on a concept at a time from the Course in Miracles, and he'd help me understand what time and timelessness was about. Then he'd help me understand what the tiny mad idea was all about. So I worked on concepts of the Course in Miracles with the Holy Spirit, and also his guidance. Now, the Holy Spirit is my right mind. Now, I talk about the Holy Spirit as if it's separate, but I liked the idea of it feeling like it wasn't me, because it felt like then it was like my teacher, my guide, and I could listen and I would ask, help me see this differently. I'm struggling with this. I want to be well. Bring me something. And I would get something. So we have a personal guide in our mind, but it is our mind, but we're not aware. So when we do end up waking up to truth, we wake up to the Holy Spirit's view or the Christ view. But while we're in our egoic mind, where we're starting at, we do need the help. And I was completely fully asleep. I was what you would call a spiritual dummy, and I was happy to be that. So just got a few things appearing on my screen. Just so another little thing I'd like to share about that's just come into my mind was when I used to get these tonsillitis episodes and the flu, I was suffering when I had the chronic fatigue. I was suffering, and I would have, I'd have to take 3 or 4 days off work when I got these flus. And they would start sort of with a runny nose, go down to sort of a sore throat, and then go into my chest. And I'd get a high fever. I'd be in bed a few days, and then they'd move out. So probably, from the start, sort of 3 or 4 days, sometimes 5 days, sometimes a week if it lingered. What happened to me one night, I started to get very clear because I'd healed. I'd been working on all my grievances. I'd worked on with all the things that I held in my mind about my mother, my father, my children, my ex-husbands, anyone at work. Every single character was reflecting to me where I was holding something in my mind. They weren't doing anything but reflect my mind, because the cause of all my upsets are in my mind. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's the truth. And if you really are dedicated and you want to awaken to this love, I would encourage you to accept that. And it's not so much, it's this absolute drive. It's like this absolute 100% going for truth. Now, the Course says that everything is in your mind. The cause is there. So why wait and dilly-dally around believing that somebody is doing something to you when the Course is saying they're not doing anything to you? The cause is in your mind. Go within and ask the Holy Spirit to help you heal your perception, and then allow it to happen. And that's all we have to do. That's what he's saying all through the Course. Just come to me. Go within your mind. Get quiet. So we need to quieten our minds. And we need to come to the Holy Spirit. And we need to surrender our views. So we're upset. Holy Spirit, help me see this differently. I give you my upset. I give you my guilt. I give you my perception about this. It's not true. It seems to be true. I'm feeling the effects of what I'm believing. And I give it to you. Because that's what, if I want to be happy, I have to be wrong. And I have to be willing to be wrong. So it says in the Course, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? And the ego wants to be right, okay? The ego wants to say, no, this person is wrong, they should change. And then that would be better for the world. But the world is a projection from your mind. So we have to. It's very radical, the Course in Miracles, extremely radical. And that's why not many people have woken up from it. The only way you really will get this, if you really throw yourself into it. I can't really express how important it is to want this. You desire it above all else. It's the most important thing. And when you give your desire for the peace of God and you're willing to be wrong about everything, just like draw a line in the sand, I'm wrong about everything, then you can be taught, then you can have a new perception brought in. But while you're still believing that some aspect, some character out there on the screen of life is doing something to you and you're upset with them and you want to be right about that and you 100% believe they need to change, then you won't wake up, because you're not able to say what I'm seeing in that person is in me. And that's hard, because to be totally wrong and say, if I'm upset, it's in my mind. The cause is there. And you've got to go within. And that's what it takes. We're asked to go within and look for the cause. And the cause will be usually the unworthiness. There's something. And do some inquiry. Get the Holy Spirit, help me see this. And give it time. Sometimes the answer will come. It may not come in the day, in a few seconds. It might take a day. It might take a week. But just keep asking, help me see this differently. I am upset. Do some inquiry on it. the most important thing is the willingness to ask, which is accepting the atonement for ourselves. So one of the things I was just going to share about this one time, I talked a little bit about how what I usually suffered with colds and flus. And as I started working with the Holy Spirit and clearing all these grievances and getting a different perception, I became clearer. My mind started getting clearer and clearer. And I started to experience this joy and this bliss, and I was having periods of intense bliss. I hadn't had the awakening, but I was very blissful. But I still had spots in my mind. But I was having periods where I was really happy and peaceful. And I remember one day my girlfriend came over and she was staying for a little while, Friday night, and we were having a chat, and I started to feel a cold coming on. And I said to her, oh, I'm getting a cold. I can feel the tickle in my nose and my nose is starting to run. And yes, I'll probably be in bed for about 3 days now. And it was probably around maybe 7 o'clock at night. And she said, oh, okay. And so anyway, we was just talking. She was on a spiritual path, so we were just talking generally about, whatever. And we were just enjoying each other's company. And I noticed that as we were talking, what started in my nose, which would have generally gone on for maybe a day, the sneezing. And I started to sneeze. Probably after about 10 or 15 minutes, I started to sneeze. And then within about 5 minutes, it went down into my throat. And I said to her, this is really strange. My whole nose is cleared up and now I've got a sore throat. And I said, that's only like 10, 15 minutes ago. And I said, my throat's sore. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And then what happened was my throat got really sore and my voice changed and it got a bit croaky. And then within 10 minutes, that had gone. It completely healed and it went down into my chest. And I said to her, it's gone into my chest. And all the phlegm came and I started coughing. And I said to her, now I've got all this chest. And I started to get a tiny bit of a fever. And I said to her, oh, I've got the fever now. And then within another 5 or 10 minutes, it had gone. And probably within half an hour, 40 minutes, I'd had what had gone through my body would usually take 4 days. It went through my body in half an hour. And all those symptoms. And I was just sitting there going, now it's doing this, now it's doing that. Watching it. And it was really interesting. So I was talking to her about it and I said, I wonder what this is. And then the Spirit started saying to me, sickness can't land in a clear mind. It just has got nowhere to stay. It's like, it was just this miracle. And I started to laugh. And I didn't get sick. I didn't have any sickness for about 3 years after that. I was very clear, very, very clear. And it just goes to show when your mind's clear that it's impossible for the body to get sick. Now, having said that, there is another teaching that everything, the script is written, and if you get something, you're meant to get it. So if I'm in this script, this body's meant to get cancer, and I'm meant to die of cancer. It will happen. So I'm not above the script. I don't believe I am. Whatever's going to happen, I really don't know. But all I know is that when your mind is clear and you're in God's mind, the body just will be healed. It'll be as it is. And when you read Anita Munjara's book, Dying to Be Me, you see how a clear mind, her awakening experience, her experience she had when she went to heaven was the closest analogy of what I experienced in my awakening, about everything's one, everything's sparkling, everything's light, and it's all in the mind. So your mind expands. So I can hear a noise in my house. So sickness. So we were reading. I didn't get far with the witnesses to sin, did we? But I did feel just to open it as an oracle and share whatever came to my mind. I just allow Holy Spirit to speak and share my experiences, because I find it very helpful to hear how the Spirit works through us. It is very interesting to hear how the Spirit uses and heals our mind, and it is an individual path. So whatever I've shared today, please don't compare, and please don't let the ego make you feel guilty. All you need to do is to be willing for healing, to be willing. You've got to want to be well above wanting to be sick. Now, when I say wanting to be sick, there is some payoff for being sick. Now, when I was sick, I used to enjoy it secretly because I got to stay home from work, and I enjoyed the little rest that I would have from my job. So there was unconscious reasoning to be sick. Now, we are choosing to be sick. There is a reason for it. Now, you might be upset that that's the teaching, but that's the teaching, and only you can find it. So if you're feeling sick and you are sick and you hear the teaching that I'm choosing this, this teaching is not to make you feel bad or guilty. All it's doing is pointing to there's some unconscious choosing. You're not consciously choosing it. It's unconsciously being chosen, and it's unconsciously being chosen from unworthiness, from something in your mind. Now, this teaching is actually for us. This teaching is to help us choose differently and to trust that as we get well, all will be well, okay? Because sometimes there's benefits. The ego can weave a whole story of the benefits of being sick. So when we want to be well, we've got to trust that when we do get well, when our mind's healed and our body's healed along with it, that we will be looked after, and we can trust in the Holy Spirit. The Spirit brings everything we need as we need it. So I'm going to finish off here, and I'm going to probably call this recording something around illness or sickness, because that seems to be when I opened it, what was talked about and what I've shared about, what's come through. So I'll finish off and I'll just do a blessing. I'll say, I love you, I bless you, and I adore you. We are one. We are the Christ self, and I join you in that Christ self, the Christ mind. And have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you and I'll share with you more I'll do some more recordings. And thank you to everyone that's messaged me and said that they've enjoyed listening to these recordings. I'm truly honoured and truly grateful. And bless you and love you and honour you. Bye-bye.